You will be introduced to these extraordinary people behind me in just a moment. And I believe you're in for such a blessing when you hear from each and every one of them. So let me thank them for being here, and I'm going to acknowledge each of them in a minute. Thank you. I want to recognize and acknowledge Congressman Jim Clyburn. And Mrs. Emily Clyburn, both of whom are here with us. I also want to acknowledge someone who I first met here in South Carolina, in Columbia, a long time ago, when I came as a young lawyer for the Children's Defense Fund to investigate the deplorable situation of young people, young teenagers, being held in adult prisons. And that's attorney Reed-Veal, who is here with us, and his wife, Linda. Who lent me his automobile at that time, a stick shift, that I drove around the state, sort of bucking and moving back and forth as I went from place to place to interview people, to gather information for the lawsuit that the Children's Defense Fund eventually filed, with Attorney Veal being involved in that. Tonight we're going to talk about two very important issues. They intersect, they are distinct, but they have grave consequences, not just for the people sitting here with me, but for all Americans. You will hear from women who have lost their children, the mothers of the movement, who have suffered as no mother ever should. You will meet Sabrina Fulton, whose son, Trayvon Martin, was followed and shot in the housing development where his father lived because he went out to buy a package of Skittles 4 years ago this week. You will meet Lucy McBath, whose teenage son, Jordan Davis, is with some friends, playing music, as every teenager I ever have known does. He was killed because the music was too loud. And three mothers who lost children to incidents with the police. Maria Hamilton, whose son Dontre was shot and killed by police in Milwaukee, Wisconsin. Geneva Reed-Veal, whose daughter, Sandra Bland, died in police custody in Texas. And Gwen Carr, whose son, Eric Garner, was choked to death after being stopped by police for selling cigarettes on the street. That's too many deaths. Too many young lives cut short. Too many questions still unanswered. Something is very wrong when we have these incidents where kids can get arrested for petty crimes and lose their lives. Something's wrong when African Americans are 3 times as likely to be denied a mortgage as white people are. When the median wealth for black families is just a tiny fraction of the median wealth of white families. And something is terribly wrong when African American men are far more likely to be stopped and searched by police, charged with crimes, and sentenced to longer prison terms than white men convicted of the same offenses. something really terribly wrong when little children in Flint, Michigan are poisoned by the water they drink and bathe in because the government is not saying nothing. Friends, we need real justice and accountability across America. We need to face the reality of systemic racism, and we need to break down all the barriers in our economy and society that hold people back and disproportionately hold back African Americans. We need to be building ladders of opportunity in the place of those barriers. And we need to rebuild trust in our justice system. For the mothers here and for mothers everywhere, we know that they have experienced a tragedy that the vast majority of us never will. What I am so grateful for is how they are turning their grief into resolve. They've been traveling across South Carolina the last few days, but they've been traveling across America to ask for the kind of real change that we need. Now, there are many state and city officials who are already working to do this. They're having police-involved shootings and in-custody deaths handled by independent authorities. I support these efforts. Today I'm announcing that we will provide federal resources to support this state and locally driven approach. Tackling and ending systemic racism requires contributions from all of us. White Americans, we need to do a better job of listening when African Americans talk about the seen and unseen barriers they face every day. We need to recognize our privilege and practice humility rather than assume that our experiences are everyone's experiences. I also believe that if we work together to make major new investments in communities that have been left behind and guarantee justice and dignity to every American, that will benefit all of us. I really applaud Congressman Clyburn's plan as to how better distribute federal funds so that those communities that have been left out and left behind over so many years can have a better chance to lift themselves up. Our problem with violence goes far beyond the terrible cases where the police are involved. That's why I'm deeply honored to have former Congresswoman Gabby Giffords and her husband. Stalking our land is another barrier holding us back. 33,000 Americans every year are killed by gun violence. Many more are wounded, as Gabby was. Gun violence is by far the leading cause of death for young African American men, more than the next 9 causes combined. Just the other night in Kalamazoo, Michigan, 6 people were killed at random. And none of us can forget the 9 faithful people murdered at Bible study in Mother Emanuel Church in Charleston. This isn't just an urban problem, as some like to say. It's a problem for our entire country. Gabby Giffords was shot while meeting with her constituents in the parking lot of a shopping mall. She was doing her job. 6 people died that day, including a 9-year-old girl who was so excited because she was going to get to meet her congresswoman. And she was standing in line to do just that. I'm very grateful that Gabby and Mark have been taking on the gun lobby tirelessly, fighting for common sense reforms. We should all join them. Comprehensive background checks. We need to keep more guns out of the wrong hands. We need to close what's called the Charleston loophole and let the killer there get a gun, even though he should have been barred. We need to revoke the special immunity gun dealers and manufacturers have today. They should be held accountable for their products just like any other company. And we need to crack down on straw purchasing and make it a federal crime. And for goodness sakes, we should bar people on the no-fly list, the terrorist fly list, from buying guns. I know the politics are hard, I'm well aware of that. But sometimes the hard things are the most important things to keep trying to do. We can't go on like this. President Obama has said we need to make it a voting issue, and I agree completely. So please join me in welcoming again these remarkable people who are taking this journey on behalf of all of us. Personally and directly, what brings them here tonight, why they are so committed to doing what they can, and let you have a chance to hear from extraordinary people of real courage and commitment. Sabrina, will you start?
Thank you. My name is Sabrina Fulton, and I'm the mother of Trayvon Martin. The reason why we're here, number one, the mothers of the movement, the mothers on a mission, is because Secretary Clinton supported us, and we have to stand and support her. Why we feel the way that we do about Secretary Clinton, and that's because we met her, and I don't want to look because it's going to make me tear up. We had the opportunity to sit with her, to meet with her, and when we met with her, she walked in as a secretary. She walked in as a political figure. She walked in as a presidential candidate, but she walked out as a compassionate mother. There was no way in the world that she was going to be able to to sit in a room with 12 different families, and each one of us had a tragic story about our sons or daughters that had been murdered as a result of senseless gun violence. The meeting took a whole nother turn because we poured out our heart where no other candidate would listen to us. Ms. Clinton did. Nobody reached out to us. Nobody listened to us. Nobody said Black Lives Matter until this brave and powerful woman stood up for us. I was never into politics, but now I am. And one of the reasons is because of her. Because I feel that if she can stand up against all the men that she has to go up against, what happened with my 17-year-old son, Trayvon Martin. Trayvon was 17 years old. He had just turned 17. He was minding his own business. He was not committing any crime. He was on the telephone with a young lady from Miami. This person decided to pursue Trayvon, to follow Trayvon, and to murder Trayvon. Trayvon was clearly profiled. The media wanted us to believe that it was about the hoodie. But you guys know that everybody wears that hoodie. It does not matter if you're black, white, purple, green, if you're African American, if you're Asian, if you're Hispanic, you wear that hoodie. Our young ladies and our young men wear those hoodies. So what was it about Trayvon? It was about the color of his skin. And we have to come to terms with that, because only when we come to terms with that will we come up with a solution about why it continues to happen. And so very simply, I'll say that it was Secretary Clinton that stood up for us. It was Secretary Clinton that met with us, that listened to us. No one took notes for her. She took notes herself. She knew about all the families that were in the room because her research team did their homework, but she heard a lot more than she probably anticipated. And we poured out our heart to her because that's our passion right now. That's our passion for the rest of our lives. These stories, as you call them, these tragedies for us, they never go away. I think about my son day in and day out. I live with this day in and day out. These mothers live with this day in and day out. And we have an opportunity to have someone that's going to stand up for us as African Americans, for us as women. I say my vote goes to Hillary Clinton.
In the mainframe, didn't get the national attention. He was demonized. He was just a thought to the Milwaukee Police Department, to the judicial system there. And Dontre was 31. Dontre was a young man that had a future bigger than life. Dontre talked about bringing duffel bags of money home and taking care of his family. Dontre wanted to do a digital license plate and was in the process of getting it done. And his life was stripped from him because of racism in Milwaukee, Wisconsin. We're the worst at everything in Milwaukee. The justice that I'm fighting for with this mother, it's across the board. It's our baby's education. It's their lives. It's where they live. It's where they learn. It's the churches they go to. We want them to live. I'm fighting for life. Dontre was shot 14 times. He had 21 bullet holes in his body because the Starbucks manager said he was sitting too close to their stand in a public park. Broad daylight. Not bothering anybody, not asking for anything. The outfit that he had on was a $400 outfit. Jordan, Jabot. But she's still seeing him as a homeless black man that was disturbing Starbucks for making money. So she called the police 3 times to have him removed out of the park. They came out on both occasions, talked to Dontre, spoke with her. The second time they came out, they told her he was a citizen. He wasn't doing anything wrong. They wasn't going to make him leave. She called a beat cop that she was familiar with. He had been a beat cop in the area. They had his personal cell phone number. They had his captain number. He missed the first message, but when he got it, he instructed dispatch to reopen that situation after he had been informed that it had been closed, not knowing that 2 police officers had already been there. And they opened it, and he went to the park. He struck Dontre 8 times with the baton. It wasn't considered a weapon because Christopher Manning, the police, had it. Once Dontre felt as though he had to stop this man from beating him and retrieve the baton, it became a weapon. And his life was taken. There has been no accountability. Dontre passed away April 30th, 2014. Me and my family took to the streets, went to City Hall. The police did 80% of the investigation. 7 days before Dontre was murdered, Scott Walker, our government, actually signed a bill stating that 2 outside entities were supposed to investigate police-involved shootings. That didn't happen. They did all the interviews of the 60 witnesses. There was no footage of video. Christopher Manning said that he was hit in the head. When we went to the DA's office and saw the pictures, there were no bruises, no scars. Christopher Manning took pictures right afterwards. There were no signs of a struggle. But Dontre, brown skin, my complexion, he had 12 bruises on his body. And they say self-defense. Christopher Manning was fired by his chief for breaking Dontre's civil rights on the approach and for a legal pat-down. It was a policy issue. He was not indicted on a local level. He was not indicted on a state level. He was not indicted on a federal level. I waited 22 months to get closure and go forward. Hillary Clinton came to Milwaukee to talk with the college students at UWM. I had the opportunity, me and my next oldest son, I probably Dr.